Has your marketing gone bitter or sour? Sit back and enjoy top shelf strategies from the Search Bar podcast, now in season 2, where we're serving up fresh perspectives to help you and your digital marketing thrive. I am your host, Eric Ritter, SEO sommelier and CEO of Digital Neighbor, a friendly neighborhood marketing and SEO company based in Tampa, Florida. In this new season of the Search Bar, we'll deep dive into key SEO and digital elements and trending digital topics every business owner should know. In today's episode, I'm very excited to be talking about all things WordPress security and maintenance and why it's important to your business. So welcome, Garrett. Thank you for joining us here. Really excited to have you on as a subject matter expert.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so Garrett is the Chief Executive Officer of State WP, and he's going to blow our minds today why it's not just important to build a website, but also to maintain it and make sure it stays safe. But don't worry, if you miss anything, I'll post a WordPress security and maintenance checklist on my website for you to download, and we'll post a link in the show notes as well. So first of all, Garrett, again, welcome. Let's get into it. I've really enjoyed our previous conversation. That's why I wanted to bring you on here. You really know your stuff when it comes to this WordPress, when it comes to security, when it comes to maintenance. So I really just want to start off and ask you if you have maybe any spooky, I know it's not Halloween, but who knows, there's maybe a ghost story or something there where someone didn't secure their website properly and why you're even in business. Like, why is there a market for what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Seen a lot of spooky stories when it comes to lack of security or maintenance on a business WordPress website. And frankly, we're often contacted after something happens rather than before and preventing it, which ends up costing a lot more money. However, as far as some of the examples of spooky things that I've seen, they range. The most common elements or the most common problems that we end up seeing are things like injected malicious scripts, which can bring a site to an absolute screeching halt. SEO spam from hackers injecting keywords or negative keywords, malware injections, affiliate link injections. So there's a lot of injections that seem to be the most common of the issues when people aren't keeping their site up. But those are some of the most common.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I don't think you gave me nightmares, but definitely very worrisome here, kind of as a business owner myself, right? Kind of because the website is my online portfolio, right? It's the way that people find me. It's the way people see me online. And so kind of someone else getting a hold of that, like you mentioned, and adding stuff to my website, that does sound very scary. So I'm just curious, obviously, if you're listening, you can't see it. I have the pleasure of sitting here, seeing Garrett. If you're watching the video, you are missing out. If you're not watching the video, you're missing out on some awesome hair here. Really, really impressed and honestly kind of jealous there, Garrett. But besides having awesome hair, why should someone trust you with website security maintenance?
Well, I definitely appreciate the hair comment, but my hair is not saving any websites at all. My company is, though, State WP. We've been in business of WordPress for about 14 years. And so we work with companies that reach millions of customers over various industries. And we focus exclusively on securing, supporting, and maintaining WordPress websites. You can trust a company like ours because we have a specialized focus, proven results, rapid and reliable support, guaranteed security. Our customers love the service that we provide. It's all wrapped into one easy-to-use portal that we call Proto. And it's essentially a one-stop shop for everything to manage a WordPress website. Our customers see things like health diagnostics, a ticketing system where they can submit requests or report bugs. And so in sum, it's because we've been doing this for a long time. We have a great track record and our customers love us.
That's awesome. So 14 years ago, the internet looked very different, obviously. So you've seen a lot of change there. I think one of the, as you were kind of talking through that, made me think of the big gorilla, 800-pound gorilla in the corner, GoDaddy, right? So I hear a lot of times from my clients or from others, like, well, my website's with GoDaddy, it's fine. So what's your kind of talking point to that? Why would I choose you? Why would I need you if I could just go to GoDaddy and have them host or take care of my website?
There are a lot of hosting accounts like GoDaddy that might offer services that could have a few components that we also offer, things like plugin or core updates. These are usually done automatically from a hosting account like GoDaddy. And when you have a custom website, which most of our clients have, updating automatically can cause some pretty serious issues. They can break things like CSS, plugins, functionality. And so we would differ from something like an automatic hosting account that is updating automatically, and in that we are testing everything for compatibility prior to launching. And generally speaking, if a website has any sort of custom components at all, those automatic updates can be quite a headache.
Yeah. And so you talked a lot about WordPress plugins, updates, core, and everything there. And that seems and I don't know enough, and that's why you're here as a subject matter expert, but I know enough about WordPress to know it's open source, right? It's something
Yes.
where there's a lot of different kind of components that need to work together. So, I'm assuming that's why your focus is just on WordPress. And that's why we're talking about WordPress here. But also, I believe there's like the staggering number of websites that are actually built on WordPress, right, Garrett?
Yeah, that's right. There's something like 800 million WordPress websites.
Wow. Okay.
It is the dominant open source content management system by leaps and bounds. It's really customizable and flexible. It's cost effective. It gives businesses control over things like the way the site looks, over their SEO. It's a very secure way to run an online business as long as it's properly maintained. And one thing that we really love about it is the fact that it is open source. It has over 1,000 developers working on WordPress core itself.
Okay.
So there's always new features, new security integrations, opportunities to optimize. And that's why WordPress is one of the most important platforms out there.
That's great. So just to understand, because you didn't mention design development, you actually don't do that, right? A lot of people build a website and then they're kind of like left on their own. And, that's kind of the horror stories I think that you mentioned, is that a website, when it's handed off, it's beautiful, right? It looks great. But because WordPress has all these different components and all these things that need to work together, over time, those things can kind of fall apart. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got our early chops in design and development. That's really where we got our interest in WordPress. But we are a focused firm now that only does the security and maintenance. And if I understand the question correctly, you're absolutely right. If you aren't keeping things up, things can break. I often use the car analogy. We rotate our tires, change the oil in our car, and we can technically go a while without doing those things, even if it's against maybe the manufacturer's warranty. However, we do know that if you go long enough, things will happen. Your security could degrade, your performance will degrade, and the same is true for a WordPress website. Eventually, the bolts will start coming off, and opportunities for bad actors will arise.
That's such a great analogy, right? So a car can make it, but eventually, if you don't change that oil, the engine's going to give up, right? It's just not going to run anymore. Right. So I think that's a great way to look at it. And you're really kind of opening my eyes to a whole world I wasn't aware of, right? And I'm sure a lot of listeners as well is, again, using the car analogy, is we all understand that when you buy a car, that's great. But if you're not taking care of it, something's going to happen down the road. Same thing on a website. It's a big investment, right? You made that big investment into your company, into the company's future, but you also need to make sure that that website continues to operate for a long time and is safe, like you mentioned, with your spooky stories where there's ads showing up or other things on the website. That can easily happen if you're not maintaining it. So why would I outsource my WordPress maintenance to someone like you? Versus, we mentioned GoDaddy, maybe have an IT person or something else. Why would I need a specialist like yourself or your company?
So that's a really interesting question, and we get it all the time. Sometimes we might get a call that say, "Hey, we're doing this work. Why would we need to hire someone like you?" And because we work with so many different types of businesses, including billion-dollar businesses that have internal teams, IT teams, marketing teams that are often in charge of keeping up their WordPress website, we find that there's lots of advantages to hiring a specialized firm. It saves time primarily so that these companies can focus on what matters. IT and marketing, although they may have the skill set to maintain the website, it's not their primary objective. And so that means if they're spending time on the website, they're not spending time somewhere else. They can offload some of the security risk. They can get proactive monitoring. A firm like ours is doing monitoring 24/7. So that's something that usually a company that's working, 9 to 5 isn't going to be able to do. Professional developers can also improve performance and make sure that it's strong and is constantly being looked at and improved. Guaranteed scheduled updates versus updates when you get around to them is a really big deal. Peace of mind. In general, expert level care, round the clock monitoring, cost savings, less risk, and a team that you can lean on for anything when necessary.
That was a huge long list. And if someone isn't convinced yet that they need to do it, they absolutely are now after hearing all of that, if they weren't before of that. So thank you. I mean, that makes so much sense, right? Kind of you're that specialist, right? Like I could try to take out my garbage disposal under the sink and maybe I can get it off, but maybe I can't get it back on. It's going to be a huge mess. And I should have just called a plumber to start off with, or because I don't want to have to now spend the time trying to figure all this out, right? You need to get a specialist for the job.
And I think going back to the spooky stories, you mentioned that maybe they weren't, absolute horror stories, but you got to remember that some of those things that I mentioned can take a site down for days at a time, and they can have a huge impact on whether products are being sold or prospects are just coming to a site to see whether or not you're a legitimate firm. So if you have the malware injected on your website, it may not sound quite as scary coming out of my mouth, but when it happens to your business, it can have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's like one of those situations where it's not scary till it happens to you, right? And then
That's right.
and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit. So as an SEO sommelier, I'm always excited to learn new ways to make things SEO friendly, future proof, right? Obviously, we all know SEO is more than one thing, right? There's a lot of different components that make up SEO. And just curious, on a WordPress website specifically, what can you do to ensure that it's SEO friendly, Garrett?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, there's so many different factors that go into SEO. Google uses countless triggers so that your website is showing up on top of search. And so when it comes to WordPress and making sure that a WordPress website is focused on best practices for search engine optimization, there are, there are certain content updates that can be made. And then there's also some technical updates that can be made. And then lastly, there's also relationships that can be made. And those are things like link building. But the best ways to ensure a WordPress site is SEO friendly is to make sure that it's performing optimally. Google loves speed. So making sure that your site is hosted in a high performing space. Core web vitals matter a lot to Google. So making sure that errors are at a minimum, they're eradicated, best practices are followed. The site needs to be properly structured and follow content and WCAG best practices. It needs to be up to date. Use a really good SEO plugin. And the reason why I say up to date, again, if there's anything that is not being updated, you run the risk of a slower website and potentially injections that shouldn't be there. And then really importantly, the site needs to be mobile optimized and performing really well on mobile because Google likes all of these things. So when it comes to WordPress, just ensuring that it's up to date, performing really well, and structurally put together following best practices are some ways that you can make sure a WordPress website is SEO friendly.
I love all of that, Garrett. And I think what it really boils down to is Google is all about the user experience, right? It wants someone to come to a website, enjoy their time, look at a bunch of pages, spend a lot of time on it. et cetera. And it's going to reward those kind of websites because Google has Google Analytics, it has Google Chrome, it has Android. So it sees what users are doing on a website and follows them, right? So if they come to a website, they leave right away because something was broken, that's a bad user experience. You're not going to rank as high.
That's right.
You mentioned Google loves speed. The reason it loves speed is because users love speed, right? Users want a quick experience. The page takes 10 seconds to load because a plugin isn't working or something. I'm going to leave. Google's going to see that. So I think, really translates well to WordPress. It's just making sure that you're covering all your bases. You're making sure everything's technically sound on there so that users are having a good experience on there, then translates into making sure that it's really going to bring in more people because it's going to have higher rankings and it's going to be SEO friendly. So I think, and I'm going to do a hand shaking a hand here, right? I think WordPress maintenance and security goes hand in hand with SEO, right? Because if you're bringing people there through good SEO, you mentioned different tactics, right? Great content, great links, et cetera. They're coming to the website, but it's a crappy, shitty experience on the website. They're going to leave. And then you can try to do all this SEO, but it's not going to work because the user experience isn't there. So I couldn't agree more, kind of SEO sommelier. I think that website security is so important and it needs to be done by a specialist like yourself. Awesome.
I'm glad you agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is why I wanted to have you on here, Garrett, and really enjoyed this. And, really want to kind of end it here for everyone with a checklist, right? So if you haven't been paying attention to now, you've missed out on a great conversation, but now's really the time you want to perk up and follow along with the checklist here. Want to give you guys some great 8 bullet points here, some things that you can do to help with your website security, right? And things that are important, no matter where you're hosting, no matter what you're doing with your website, these are non-negotiables, right? You need to make sure, that these 8 things are in place. And number one, since we're talking about WordPress, right? WordPress is software really at the end of the day. So there's going to be updates for that. You want to make sure you're up to date, right? We all know it from our iPhones or our Androids, right? Apple, Google, they're pushing out those updates. They're not just doing that for fun. They're not just doing that because they're trying to sell you something. It's also for security purposes, right? People are gonna hack into your phone potentially. You go to a website and then your phone doesn't work anymore. That's because you're not updating to the newest iOS or Android operating system. Same thing on WordPress, right? And WordPress calls those WordPress core updates. And those are a big deal, right, Garrett?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, if you're not updating this, if you don't have a core update, you're either missing out on the latest security features or the latest bells and whistles. There are reasons why these updates are pushed.
Yeah. And I mean, they can break the website. That's why I think it's important to also not just push them, but also be ready for them. And just using the Apple analogy, right? Apple owns the hardware and software. So they know if they're pushing out that update, there's not going to be any issues. Your phone's going to work. But with WordPress, you have so many different components, companies working together. Each plugin is made by someone different. Each theme is made by someone different. WordPress core is made by WordPress, right? So you need someone who's almost like babysitting that core update to make sure it's successful.
I think that's a really good point. I use that analogy all the time. Everyone can understand how their phone works and how their phone updates work. If you have an iPhone and an app has an update, you might see a little red notification. You don't think twice. You just go ahead and update it and everything will work fine. That is not the case in WordPress. You might get that little red notification, but if you go ahead and push the update and don't know what you're doing, you can absolutely break all sorts of things on the website.
Awesome. So we're talking about number 1 was core updates. There's a couple other updates I want to get to. Number 2 are the plugins. It's a much smaller update. You mentioned kind of like app updates. I would say a WordPress core update is like the whole operating system, where the plugin is like an individual app. And again, on your phone, each app is separate. It has its own little thing you click on and then the app works. But in WordPress, one plugin, and I've seen this personally, a whole website can come down just because you update one plugin. And all of a sudden, it's clashing with other plugins and the whole website goes down. Have you seen something like that before, Garrett?
Yeah, we see it all the time. And sure, also you might end up upgrading the core or the plugins, or one or the other, and one breaks the other when you do it. So there's a lot of opportunity for mistake if you don't know what you're doing. And so you do want to have the latest core. You do want to make sure that your plugins are updated frequently. But one thing about WordPress, to your point, there's so many different developers and so many different plugins out there that as soon as you push an update, there might be another one instantly available. And so one thing that another reason why you might want to have an expert doing this for you is that you don't have to update everything the second it comes out. And we find that it's really important to make sure that everything is tested for compatibility, for reliability prior to pushing it out, unless it's a critical or security related update.
That's fantastic advice, right? It's not like you need to have the trigger finger right there when the update is out, because you never know how it's going to interplay with others. So number 3 are theme updates. I feel like we're getting a little repetitive here with all these updates, but I know they're all important. So Garrett, that's why you're on here as a subject matter expert. Why should I care about theme updates?
Yeah, so for very similar reasons as we discussed with the core or the plugins, if you aren't keeping your theme updated, and your theme is sort of the style or the look of your website, you can run into the same issues. There can be security holes, compatibility with either WordPress core or the other plugins. You might be missing out on new features or functionality, potential bugs, lack of performance. And ultimately, if you aren't keeping your theme up to date, it can cost you a lot in the long run. So keeping all your core, your theme, and your plugins up to date as a whole, ensuring they're all compatible with each other, is really a holistic approach to keeping your entire website safe.
Love it. And I like how you tied those 3 together because they really fit together, right? You can't really just separate them out. You need to make sure all 3 are updated there. And so one thing, number 4, that you can do is 24/7 monitoring. So 24/7 means around the clock, right? Because a website never sleeps. Users never sleep. People are coming to the website. And so you want to make sure that it's always up and running. Like you said, a website could be down for days. And personally, I've had clients, they've like, oh, my website's been down. How long has it been down? Oh, I don't know. It's like, whoops, you should be monitoring it, right? You need to keep an eye on it. Right. And so I'm assuming at State WP, that's part of your service, right? You guys are keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, that's right. So we monitor websites for uptime, downtime, 24/7, 365. And a website can go down for so many reasons, including really silly reasons that we see all the time from businesses. For example, they forgot to put their SSL on auto renew, or they didn't pay their hosting bill. And so, something like a WP Engine or an AWS will just cut their hosting off if the bill wasn't paid, and the site will go down. Should that happen to one of our customers, even though we encourage everyone to go on auto renew, we are notified right away. We can either reach out to the customer, or if we have access to their hosting or domain, and make sure that those bills are paid, and the site would go back up pretty quickly.
I love it. And again, that's so important, right? It's all of a sudden going back to the car analogy, like you're going to notice if your car isn't running anymore, right? Like if you put in the key and it doesn't work anymore, you need to have that knowledge about your website as well, which brings us to number 5, which are backups. This is probably the nearest and dearest to my heart as a marketer, as an SEO person, because a big part of doing marketing, doing SEO is making website updates and updating the website, whether that's content or like, hey, this button isn't in the right position. I'll move from the top to the bottom. And you're like, okay, cool. Everything looks good. And then a couple hours later, it doesn't work anymore. And the whole website basically exploded. I've had that happen before to myself, right, on a website. And that's why backups are your BFF as a marketer. Because you're like, oh, let me pull that back up when the website was working before I made my edits. And now it's working again, right? And so I'm sure that's one use case, but do you guys have like other reasons or other use cases that you guys are creating backups for, Garrett?
Yeah, well, we're creating backups for any reason that you might want to back up for. I agree with you completely. They're incredibly important. Our most popular package comes with daily backups of the website and the database in case there is a mistake or in case there is an emergency. There's all sorts of different reasons. I think that the most popular reason is just someone messing up. For example, maybe they didn't even know they copied a piece of JavaScript that is screwing up the whole menu or something on their website. and they can't figure it out. And so they need a site restore. But there's the more, the scarier reasons where if a site was maliciously attacked, for example, and we would need to restore a recent copy from the day before or even the day of. So the same way you would back up any important file, it's very important that your website and database and media and everything associated with the website is also backed up.
That's so true. And as you were saying that, kind of backing things up, made me remember the days before everything was in the cloud. And you would like write that paper for school in Word or the PowerPoint presentation. You forget to save it. Computer crashes and all that work is gone. Nowadays, like I'm in Google Docs and I don't even like, it used to be a reflex for me, either Apple or Command S, just save every 30 seconds, every 60 seconds, because you don't want to lose it, right? Nowadays, you tell someone, oh, are you saving that? Like, what does that even mean, right? It's always backed up to the cloud. And same thing with your website. You always want to Control S it and make sure that it's saved in case something breaks or something crashes.
Yeah, well, we were constantly Control S-ing because we had a disaster happen. You're writing a term paper or something, and you forgot, and it disappeared, and you lost 10 hours of work. It was just an absolute nightmare.
Absolutely. Luckily, those days are behind us for good, Garrett.
Yes.
So number 6 on the checklist is SSL setup, SSL security, right? We went through memory lane a little bit there. I also want to go back to the days where not everybody had an SSL on their website, right? It was actually only necessary, like it was an e-commerce website. You were giving people your credit card information. You would have that little lock symbol like in the menu bar, oh, this is a secure website. And, that's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS, where now everything is secure on the web. And that's the same thing on your website. You mentioned earlier, that's a certificate you need to purchase and it can expire, right?
Yeah, that's right. And also going back to your earlier question about SEO, if you don't have an SSL certificate, Google is just going to skip right over you. So SSL, it's become a best practice. It's part of those best practices I was talking about earlier. You have to have an SSL on basically any site. If you're a professional service that has primarily a brochure style site, you still need an SSL. Customers don't or visitors just don't feel safe going to a website without one. Oftentimes browsers, Chrome, Safari, Edge, they might actually show a warning if your site doesn't have an SSL. So it has a lot of hosting accounts now include SSL certificates, but you got to have one on every type of site for making sure that your visitors feel safe. And in fact, if you are transacting data or collecting data from forms or selling products, you need to have an SSL.
Absolutely. No. So let's bring it home. The final point on the checklist, monthly reporting, right? So you mentioned earlier kind of part of your services are that you report to clients. For me, it's much more focused on marketing, right? It's how many people came to the website, where did they come from, how did they get to the website, what did they do on the website, did they do what we wanted them to do? So it's much more superficial, I feel like, where I'm assuming for you, you're getting much more in depth, right? You're looking at kind of the hits on the server, kind of the uptime, downtime. What are some things that you need to be aware of, when you're really focused on that website security that you're monitoring and maybe reporting on a monthly basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned at the beginning of our chat about our Proto, which is our dashboard, and our clients actually get access to these real-time stats and diagnostics. But since a lot of our customers are busy, they rely on these monthly reports. And so whether they're looking at real-time or monthly reports, they are the same, just different measurements. Ultimately, some of the data that is most important to our customers include things like server response time, uptime, like you mentioned, things like what version of WordPress core, what version of my plugins, do I have broken links, what are my analytics? And so these are all going to be data-driven reports based on what was done within your WordPress instance or your hosting account for the month.
Awesome. That makes so much sense. So those were the points that you want to go through on a checklist there. You guys have it all covered at State WP. If you want to just give a quick rundown, what kind of clients should be coming to you at State WP? Are there kind of websites that you are looking for, websites you don't want to work with, or you just work with everyone?
Well, there's only one requirement to work with us, and that it's the website is built on WordPress. We work with small mom and pops to billion-dollar companies. The theme that is constant through all of them is that every single one is built on WordPress. We tend to focus on professional services like insurance companies and law firms, but we also have lots of nonprofits, e-commerce, and everything in between.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Garrett. Everyone listening, watching, be sure to check out State WP. And thank you so much for joining us here at the Search Bar Podcast. Be sure to connect with me and Garrett on LinkedIn to follow our journeys in all things digital. You can find the link in the episode description. And if you have any SEO or website questions, feel free to reach out to me or Garrett directly on LinkedIn. I will have us both linked in the description. As the CEO of Digital Neighbor, I'm always excited to discuss any of these topics. And before you go, I'd love it if you could leave a review for the podcast. I promise to read every single one on a future episode and give a shout out to our listeners. Your feedback really helps me improve and keep the conversation going. I really hoped Garrett and I have filled your glass with digital wisdom and look forward to having you join us in the next episode of the Search Bar Podcast. Cheers, everyone.